Hey guys, and welcome to the first video in our Chapter 1 lecture on fundamental concepts of motor development. So this first section is going to go kind of over what motor behavior is, right? So movement is a critical part of our lives, and it can range from simple tasks such as walking, like we do this every day, right? Eating, or blinking, right? Which could be voluntary, it could be involuntary. So these are very, very simple movements. We could also have more complex movements such as dancing, doing sport or athletic activities. That's a failed pole vault attempt. And we can also use speech, right? Speech is actually a lot more complex than you think it is. And there's actually about 100 muscles involved in just composing one phrase. So the big question is, how do we coordinate all of these movements? How do we plan and execute them? How do we learn and acquire new skills? And all of these questions are explained by this big umbrella field known as motor behavior. Now we can split motor behavior into subsets. So you guys have been exposed to two of these, or in the time that you are in your kin program, you will have been exposed to two of these, one being motor control and the other one being motor learning. So these are the topics that are encompassed in kin 312. Motor control is the study of neural, physical, and behavioral aspects of movement, so kind of going into the how we coordinate movement, how we generate movement. And then motor learning is based on the study of motor skill acquisition. So usually when you look at motor learning, you look at practice strategies, you look at different stages of learning, you look at methods of feedback, and how you might space out learning skills in general. Okay, this class is going to be focusing on the subset of motor behavior called motor development, and we're specifically going to be looking at development across the lifespan. We'll be looking at different body systems, different skills, so locomotor skills, manipulative skills, ballistic skills. We'll look at trends in physical activity, trends in certain body systems and how they progress and then deteriorate over time. So motor development is a continuous process, right? It's also age-related, and these are based on changes that we notice in movement and the interacting constraints that drive those changes. So this class that's the overarching concept. So if we move into this motor development concept more, there are certain characteristics that make up development. So in that small definition we just saw, we had that it is a continuous process of change in functional capacity. Functional capacity meaning someone's ability to live, move, etc. Okay, so this change can increase or decrease, right? So the direction or the magnitude of change are going to be dependent on the stage in the lifespan. The magnitude of change can also be small or big. Okay, so how we change is going to be largely based on the constraints that we end up interacting with, and I'll get to constraints in the next section. So we have development as a continuous process. Development is also age-related. Okay, so the big thing here is it's not age-dependent. And the reason why we say this is that there are developmental milestones that could be expected at or around a particular age, but they're not distinctly defined by that age. So let's say that infants typically start walking around 11 to 12 months, right? There could be some instances where that is not true for some instance. Either they have arrested development, they have delayed development, right? There could be several factors that are kind of contributing to a person's individual process. So It's age-related in the sense that we have a general idea of when we would expect certain milestones or certain movements to be present, but those movements and milestones are not dependent on the age. Okay. Certain constraints can inhibit or accelerate development. Okay, so that, like I said, we'll talk about constraints in a bit because those are kind of a big overarching concept of this entire book that we are basing all of the lectures off of. But it's important to note that while development follows a general pattern, again, rates of development can differ among individuals of the same age. So we have a continuous process and we have age-related characteristics. The last thing is that development is sequential. So even though development is an individual process, the order in which we typically see patterns or changes in development, changes in types of movement are usually orderly, predictable, and usually they're irreversible. We put most often because when we start talking about body systems, particularly like the neural system, as well as muscular and bone, right? All of those things you guys might know from anatomy or physiology do begin to deteriorate with age. So more often than not, development in the big sense is orderly and predictable, most of the time irreversible. Related terms to development that will come up within our class is physical growth. Okay, so this is a quantitative increase in size or magnitude, something that is measurable, right? Usually we start at conception and then physical growth will typically end late in adolescence, early in 20s, kind of when you are done with your puberty phase. Okay. Maturation or physiological maturation is another one or another term that will pop up throughout this semester. And this is specifically referring to someone's progress towards physical maturity. Okay, so when we talk about maturity, we're referencing optimal functioning of body systems and more specifically the ability to reproduce. So maturation or physiological maturation usually reaches its peak once a person has the ability to reproduce. The last term that will pop up is aging or age-related processes. So this is the process of growing older regardless of chronological age. Typically, aging will involve changes that lead to loss of function, adaptability, or death. I don't know why I just thought of SpongeBob when I thought of aging. But I think it's important. These are terms that will be thrown around, and a lot of times they are used interchangeably with the word development. But as you can see, each of them actually has a little bit of a nuanced difference from the other or from one another. So while they're often associated with development, they are not synonymous with the overarching concept of development, because development is saying we're continuous, it's age-related, it's sequential. Physical growth and maturation do have a stopping point. While aging is continuous, we don't usually see it until later in the lifespan, or at least the rate is different. So again, these will come up when we talk about development, but they're not synonymous with it. Our next video, we're going to talk about constraints. So if you want to go ahead and pause or stop this one, check your notes, do a little bit of review, and then I'll see you in the next video.